You're watching Vex It, and I'm here with Scott. He is an actor, and he's going to tell us about how he got it started and why it is his passion. Why does he do it?
I used to be an actor first and an actor only. I started after college. I went to New York, which is what you had to do back then. And now it's different with video, and the pandemic changed things too. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Yeah, I started out in New York. I worked regionally and on the road for many, many years. About 15 years into my career, I got a role in Hairspray on Broadway. It was my first Broadway show. Right after that, I was in the Broadway show Chicago. That was a 6-month contract, and probably the highest that I reached at that time. And then when that contract ended, I worked 15 years to be to get a Broadway show. And I got 2 back-to-back. I didn't know when or if another Broadway show was coming, and it was 2008. The market had crashed, and I had a young son, and my wife and I decided maybe we don't have to be actors first anymore because of
Got obligations.
Yeah, obligations. It was great when I was working on Hairspray because my son was a toddler,
right?
And I would we lived in New Jersey. We had this great house in New Jersey. Really happy there, and I would hang out with him all day,
right?
Feed him, take him to the playground, just be with them, give him a little dinner, and then I would go into the city and do my show. So I felt like I didn't miss any time. It was those 4.5 years were really the best time of my life.
That's awesome.
I still enjoy what I'm doing, and I love my family. But yeah, that's why. That's why all that happened. So now that I'm here in Arizona, it's different. I was going to say I'm not an actor first, but you could never really say that. I think it's how I define myself.
Right.
It's why we actually came to Phoenix, my wife and I, because it didn't have, or at least we didn't think it had, a theater community. Or we knew it must have a theater community, but it's not like New York, certainly.
Right.
And we considered Florida for a while, which I would never do. I would never do it now, knowing what I know now. Back then, it felt a little different.
Right.
And we had family in Florida. And my wife was like, I don't want to go to Florida because they have a booming theater community with a lot of union houses.
Right.
And they have a film production, and you're just going to want to do that. And whereas our focus now needs to be providing for our son and living a more traditional lifestyle, which we did for a time. And then we found the Phoenix Theater.
That's where we're at now, is at the Phoenix Theater. We're on stage, and you just finished the show. And what is the show that you're in?
It's it's called Miracle on 34th Street, which is based on the old movie. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't, but now I have to watch it.
It's nostalgic.
Right.
It's from a different era. The show that we're doing is set in 1947, and it is a radio play of the famous movie with a young Natalie Wood and other actors that your viewers may or may not know. But it's really we mentioned that title. Most people, if they've not seen it, they associate it with Christmas.
I knew of it.
Yeah.
But I've only seen snippets of it before.
Yeah.
But it's very iconic.
Yeah, it is, and so it's just the idea is now you're in a studio in Phoenix, and we're here to recreate that movie in a radio play. You can't see them here, but there's little applause signs behind here, and it's a fun challenge for the actor, right? Because I am playing a character called Christopher Van Lisburg, who is an actor who is playing Kris Kringle, who is in Miracle on 31st Street, this man who thinks he's Santa Claus, or is he just Santa Claus? That's for you to decide. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. We're about halfway through our run. It's been great. Audience have no problem selling this show at all. This title.
You had a sold out show the last one, right?
We were sold out last one. We've been sold out most of the run, and it's very gratifying. And I think the audiences are enjoying it, and it's really putting people in a holiday spirit. And it's so fun. First of all, the cast is incredibly talented.
Yeah.
These are singer actors. Most of them studied voice. They have really professionally trained voices, which I do not. I sing a little bit in the show, but they really carry the weight of it. They sound perfect. It's a quintet that sings all these old. They sing these jingles that sound like 1940s radio jingles. They're doing commercials that you might have heard in 1947, and they have done new arrangements or jazzy arrangements of these classic Christmas carols, and it's a highlight of the evening. It's very dynamic. What's been created here.
That's pretty awesome. And you guys are doing 2 shows when you're doing your shows, 2 shows a day?
It depends on the day. Today is 2 shows. Today's Thursday. We got a show this afternoon and a show tonight, but Friday 1 and then 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. 8 shows a week.
And then, like, how much of variation do you have? Or is it, like, stay to the script? Like, in terms of, like, will you see slightly different show?
Yeah.
If you come.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the beauty of live theater always. Even if the rule is, and I don't know if you should say the rule, I think the standard is you say the words that are written. There are directors who are very, very strict about that. And I think with good reason. The play was written in a specific way. And that is the rule, right? That's the Bible. You really shouldn't play around too much unless it's acknowledged in the script that this is a moment that can be what it wants to be. But when you're building a production, those things happen very naturally and organically in rehearsal. And when they do, you'd like to recreate them on stage as long as they came from a very honest place.
Right.
And there were a couple instances today actually of some ad-libbing that were really, really appropriate and hilarious.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, like, how does it feel when you're on stage?
I feel at home on stage. I feel like it was what I was. It sounds cliche, but I really feel like it's what I was meant to do, what I was born to do. That's why when I took that break, when we moved from New York to Arizona, I know that I was saying to the world, I don't do this anymore. But it never really
left me.
In fact, when we first got here, I got a call from a casting director.
Uh-huh.
They were casting Hairspray, which I'd done on Broadway, right? And Disney's Aladdin, pre-Broadway, at Tuacahn Theater, which is this unbelievable theater in St. George, Utah. It's built into a gorge. It's an outdoor theater. It's incredible. It really is a sensational venue. Uh-huh. And so they reached out and said, "Hey, one of the guys who I had understudied in Hairspray was leaving Tuacahn to go do something in L.A. So they need somebody really quick who knew that the role of Edna in Hairspray, which is a man playing a woman."
Right.
I don't know if you know how familiar you might be with.
You showed me some pictures in the past.
Yeah, I've showed you pictures. Yeah. Harvey Firestein played the role in New York, originated the role in New York. John Travolta did it in the recent movie, and Divine did it back in the 80s, I guess, when it was originally. Anyway, that's not important. The important thing is Paul Vogt was doing it at Tuacahn. I had understudied Paul Vogt on Broadway, so they needed someone immediately. And Paul was also doing this great role in Aladdin. Said, "Can you come up and learn it in a week?" And I mean, we had just got here. Right. We just got to Utah, and I didn't have a job. I had only recently got into hospitality, which is how we know each other. Right. And I knew no matter what job I got, it wasn't going to pay me as much as I was going to be able to make there. Plus, it was doing what I wanted to do. Right. And so, essentially, I got here. I was here about 2 days, and then went to St. George.
That's
Utah.
awesome.
It was great, and that production of Aladdin was unbelievable. They had camels. I rode a camel on stage.
No way.
Yeah, it's great. So I don't remember what the question was, other than I never said goodbye to it. Right. And I had a little bit. I said I had allowed myself to be okay. I'm not an actor first anymore. Right. I'm not going to consider that anymore. Then Tuacahn reached out, and I got this job in this glorious space. Right. And with a bunch of kids, mostly. There were some older actors, but a bunch of kids who were super passionate about being in the theater. And it was just like, oh my God, of course. I'd become a little bit jaded. I'd had those 2 Broadway experiences. And I said, oh, it's not everything I thought. I mean, Hairspray was a dream. But the realities of professional life in New York darkened the dream a little bit, and I was okay with I don't have to be that anymore. Right. Don't have to do it. Mm-hmm. And then I went to TuaCon. I was like, oh no, I do have to do it.
Right.
I do have to make it part of my life. And I found the balance here at Phoenix Theater. They've been I'm not a resident actor here, but this is my
Home.
artistic residence. Yeah.
I love it.
But they're one of the few theaters in Phoenix that work with union actors. There are some other theaters that do on occasion. There's one that does very consistently, but you have to be available to work both in in Phoenix and Tucson.
Oh, that's a lot.
Trying to balance that with the full-time job
That's
at the hotel that I have, it's too much.
Right.
So this affords it. This place recognizes nobody comes to Phoenix to be a full-time actor.
Right.
You can't do it.
Uh-huh.
So, but there are talents here who could be doing it full-time if they went to New York and wanted to live that lifestyle, but aren't.
Right.
And work around their schedules so that we rehearse later in the day. Most people, or many people, work their full-time job during the day, and then they go to their second full-time job, which is creating art here at the theater at night. And so I am so thankful for this place. I think they do it right here. They really do.
The last play you were in was a pretty iconic, historic play as well.
Yes.
And it was fitting for the time period, I feel, as well.
It was.
What play was
Well, it
that?
was Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay.
And I was playing Tevye.
I wouldn't have to work hard.
Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. Find me a find, cat me a cat. It's a perfect match.
Because I'd never played Tevye before.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I wasn't initially cast as Tevye in this production here at Phoenix Theater. I was cast as Laser Wolf, who is, in the show, just a suitor to one of Tevye's daughters. And I was understudying the role of Tevye. And when I accepted my contract, I said, well, I'll do it, because I'll do it. It was any chance to do a show that I can
Right.
fit into my work schedule, I want to do it. That show specifically, I want to do it. I really wanted to be Tevye, but they're bringing in an actor from LA who was great, and I was his understudy. And I said, I'll do it. I negotiated just 2 performances. I said, if I'm going to learn that role, I really want one chance to do it,
Right.
and then maybe I want 2 chances, right? Because that one chance, the
Yeah.
first chance may not go so good.
You got to perfect
I mean,
it.
I just thought, and I've done a lot of understudying in my career, so I'm used to it, and I know the work it takes, and I'm okay in other instances of not having that opportunity. But in this instance, I thought, I don't know, I'm getting another chance to play this iconic role.
Right.
I want my one chance. They accepted. The actor who was coming in to do it said, no problem, of course. We'll figure out the dates, and I had those dates set. And 10 days before we opened, he got a national tour of I can't remember what it was. Not Poltergeist. What is the Michael Keaton movie? Beetlejuice.
Oh, Beetlejuice. Yeah.
Yeah. So he went into that, and they didn't really ask me. They told me
You're the guy now.
yeah, Scott will be taking over the role. It was we had this little meeting after rehearsal one day, and those moments when you say that your jaw drops.
Right.
My jaw literally dropped. I looked around at the artistic director, and the casting director,
Like, is
and
this
the
for real?
director of the show. I was so grateful. I couldn't believe it happened, because I was so grateful to have just those 2 performances, and now I was going to have the full run, which I did, and it was. If I never do anything else again, and of course I already am,
Right.
that would have been worth it. Everything would have been
Pinnacle.
worth it. It was such a
Or
good
Pinnacle,
company.
right?
It was it was surrounded by and they were so supportive. The cast was like, "What's happening?
Right.
We're getting a brand new. We're opening in a week and a half." And we did it, and it was a great production. I'm so proud of the work that we did, and I hope to do it again.
So, okay, I'm not an expert on acting. For people that are not aware, what is the process of a play starting? Like, does that like?
Well, you're talking about a play like Fiddler, or
Yeah,
like this
yeah.
one. Where it's a play that's already been created.
Yeah.
It's already had a run on Broadway,
Yeah.
or in this case, in the movies. It's a long process, right? casting starts with. I mean, there's pre-production
Right.
that I'm not really
Fair.
well versed.
What the aspects that would include you?
Yeah. Well, there's casting, right? So
Mhm.
there's usually I would say a request for submissions
Mhm.
for roles. There's a casting director who is Chelsea Anderson in this case, casting director at the Phoenix Theater, and also the director of this specific production, Miracle on 34th Street. Will send us a request for submissions,
Mhm.
all the roles. There'll be a breakdown of what they're looking for. They go through those submissions, and then there's a callback.
Right.
It could be, it used to be before the pandemic, it used to be a callback would always be in person. Auditions would always be in person. Occasionally, if you were an out-of-town actor and you were interested, they would say, go ahead, send us your tape.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it's like in the casting room. I imagine, at least I thought at the time, well, if we can find it here, let's cast locally. And they are very good here about casting locally. Very good. But now, you don't have to be here.
Present.
They do. They will. I imagine if it's one or the other, and you've got a local actor, they're going to go with the local actor. It's more cost effective for them.
Right.
And it celebrates the community, and that's what this place is about. So, there's that call, there's the audition, the callback, and then there's casting. And you're cast. A show like Fiddler on the Roof, we had two and a half weeks of rehearsal.
That's what I was curious about. How long is generally the process, give or take?
It's so interesting.
Rehearsal.
You know, you do this in college when you're learning,
Right.
And your rehearsal period is like 2 months,
Right.
you know, and then your run is like 2 weeks, or
Right.
2 weekends.
Mhm.
We're here. I think it's 2 and a
That's
half. I
fair.
don't know.
About 2 to 3 weeks generally.
And then you there's a right before the last week of rehearsal, there's a technical week tech where we're here long hours. They're setting lights. They're working all the technical elements of the show. Any scene changes. They're incorporating the orchestra. It's the process where everything sort of comes together, and then a couple more dress rehearsals, and then you open the show.
That's so awesome.
I mean, I think that's a real simplistic way of looking at it, but that gives a general picture.
Is there a play that like you've seen that like would really on the level of Fiddler on the Roof that also interests you?
That interests me?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, everything interests me. I don't know if there's anything I haven't done.
Right.
I'm sure there is. I wish that I'd thought about that.
Right.
I was involved with the producers very, very soon after that show was opened on Broadway. I booked the second national company, and I worked on the first national company, and I am in the film. And if you blink, you will miss me, but I'm in it.
Right.
So that's a show that if like they're doing that less and less. That's a show I'd love to be attached to. I'd love to do Hairspray again.
Right.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I've been such a fan of it
Mm-hmm.
my whole life. I think about today how many resources there are for young people to learn about the history of it.
Right.
Anything you want is at your fingertips at all times. Saying when I started, it was last century, and there was no internet.
Right.
And I was living in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in eastern Massachusetts, but went to school in western Massachusetts, which is close to New York, but it's not New York.
Right.
And I just remember, like, if I wanted to know about, you were generally aware of shows and what was happening in New York just because it was in the news, it was in a newspaper, or and in the newspaper you read about it, and you knew where you could buy recordings of shows, and you listen to shows and read the liner notes, and maybe there was a book or two that was available. But I remember for years going to the library. There was a book at my college library that had the book of all the New York Times reviews of all of the shows that ever opened on Broadway. And I would read those because that was like, I mean, I guess you could find a history book that talked about it and taught it, but it wasn't like you could just go, oh, I'd love to see a clip from this. I'd love to see a clip from the original cast of Fiddler on the Roof. And now you can just do that.
Isn't that amazing?
In a second, in your home.
Right.
So I think that people coming up now are much more savvy than I was. And I was particularly unsavvy. And I say that because I didn't I didn't study theater in college. I was a communications major.
Right.
I was going to be like a broadcast journalist. That was my thing. I wanted to do because I've had this body all my life, and so I wasn't going to be an athlete, right? But I loved sports. I loved basketball and baseball, and I thought if I could do anything with that, that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I wasn't going to be able to do that, but maybe I could just be in that industry and use my performance chops, right, to talk to a camera, and announce sporting events. And that's what I was studying at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. My senior year, I got a scholarship with the CBS affiliate in Boston as an intern. I would help editors cut highlights for pieces, and occasionally, and it happened quite a bit actually, when the broadcast was getting close, like the game was going late at Fenway, Red Sox game was going late. They would send me over to get the post-game interviews because the talent had to come back to the studio to host the news. So I had that opportunity.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. I interviewed I remember Roger Clemens.
That's really
Red
cool.
Sox at the time. Yeah. Mike Krzyzewski, who was the coach of Duke. They came to play Boston College that year. I interviewed him. I mean, a lot. Jim Rice, who was a Hall of Famer, was my idol. And I was just hanging out in the locker room.
Right.
It was weird because, in a way, I got too close.
Right.
It was less exciting.
Right.
And a little more real. So, at the end of my internship, they offered me a summer position. It was going to be it really was a great opportunity to be a producer, a field producer, a paid position. At the same time, I was offered my first acting contract opportunity. Right, it was summer stock at a theater in upstate New York, tiny theater. It was called the Fort Salem Theater, and they were going to pay me, I think, $125 a week. I don't remember what the other offer was. It was dwarfed. It dwarfed this. 125 may be high. Maybe not, but you get to live in a condemned hotel. We'll make that for you. I mean, it really was. But but everybody there loved it. It's like, oh my God! Every day, it's like you just immerse yourself in theater and putting on a show and being around other people who are excited about putting on a show and meeting people and making relationships, and so that was the choice I made. I went and I did, 4 shows at a tiny little theater in upstate New York, and created some memories for a handful of people. Looking back, who knows, right? If I had done the other thing, I'm certain that I'd be making more money today than I'm making now. But that's not what life is about for me.
Right.
I certainly, but if I'd also made that choice, I don't think I would have been on Broadway.
Right.
And that really
that's pretty major.
That really, I mean, if you said, what was your goal? I don't even know if I'd call it a goal.
Right.
It was a dream.
Right.
It was a dream to be on Broadway, perform on Broadway. And then to do it in Hairspray in the role that I did it with, it's just, you have ups and downs.
Right.
In your career, but I'll always have that.
Right.
I've been able to do that to help to support my family with my very supportive wife, who's also an actor and truly the more talented of the two of us, and have a son, and have a family. It's just, I have no complaints. I just if I were to do it again,
right,
I think I would advise young people to get a degree in theater.
Okay.
The problem with that is the percentages of people who set out to do it, who ultimately get to do it. I can't imagine it's more than 1%. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you said that because I went to culinary school and I worked in a kitchen for all of a year.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't for me.
Well,
I enjoyed the school.
With theater, I think it's not that it wasn't. It's not for people.
It's just so hard
there
to
are no opportunities.
Right.
And then when you get them, you have to settle for what I settled for at the Fort Salem Theater.
Right.
And the idea is you keep putting your dues and it'll happen for you.
Right.
For me, it was a little bit easier because I've had this hairline and this waistline since I was 22 years old.
Right.
So I'm now in my 50s, and I'm only now I played. We talked about, and because I tend to run at the mouth. Fiddler on the Roof. I didn't, and I was cast as Laser Wolf. I played Laser Wolf 30 years ago.
Really?
I was playing Laser Wolf. Is supposed to look like this.
Right.
And I kind of did, right? But this is actually not all white. I've got some makeup in here because I want to look like
Yeah,
Kris
yeah.
Kringle. But I was 25 years old when I played Laser Wolf the first time, and that's because it's because it was a bus and truck tour, a non-union tour. So the travel schedule was hard. It's like a rock and roll travel schedule.
Right.
It's like we were doing like one night stands.
Really?
And we would drive 400 miles and do another one. Do a sound check, do the show, go to the hotel, have some drinks, wake up at 4 a.m, start all again. And I loved it.
Right.
Loved it. And then, I ultimately got to a level where I was doing production contracts, right, which pay much better, and,
right.
And you're staying in hotels and you're getting rest. And I loved that too. If I'd never met my wife, I think I could have done that
right.
the rest of my life and been okay. But I wouldn't have my son,
right.
and I wouldn't trade anything for that. In fact, I often say, I don't regret anything that was leading up to 9 months before July 1st,
Fair.
2004, when my son was born. I've got some regrets about some of the choices I made after. But to have this specific kid with my wife, and that being that I was able to have all that up until that moment, I can't regret anything I did that got me there, because I'm so happy with that. So anyway.
Sorry for the abrupt stop. This was the first half of Scott's interview. Thanks for watching this far. Please watch the second half and give us some comments. Let us know what you like and what you think could be improved upon. I'll see you guys in the next half. Have a great day.